I've grown to love Derek Schmidt through this last 5 or 6 days. And it's not just because of the policy. It's not just because of his good speaking abilities, but it's this. It's because we share the same values. A young man from Independence, Kansas, who stood up to Joe Biden on multiple times. Just last week, one of the attorney generals leading the fight against the forgiveness of school loans. Does anybody in this audience thinks it's a good idea to forgive people's school loans? Yeah. So Derek has proven that he'll fight Joe Biden. He's going to keep fighting that policy. I don't think that this state can stand 4 more years of Laura Kelly. Think what how she's going to govern. She's been governing already like a socialist. She'll govern like a Marxist if we give her another 4 years. But back to these values that Derek and I share, and so many of you all share as well. Values like faith, faith that we wear in our heart, not our shirt sleeve. Values like family. Families that help each other, that love each other no matter what. And the last value I want to share with you is something called community. Now, when I talk about community on the East and West Coast to the senators from those states, they look at me like, what do you mean by community? Derek and I believe that those closest to the problem can solve the problem the best if we keep government out of the way. We believe that government is not the solution to the problem. Government is the problem. I think that Kansans know how to take care of their kids and what that school curriculum should look like. I think that Kansans know how to support our law enforcement officers, how we need to grow the economy. But we need leadership in Topeka. We need a dramatic change. The choice has never been clearer to me. This is not about myself. It truly is about my children and my grandchildren's future. That's what's important to me. I've got to live this American dream, raised in El Dorado, Kansas, a first-generation college student. I got to go to medical school. Derek has lived the great American dream. All of us have. I just want to be able to share this with future generations. I want to lead this nation the way I found it. So please join me in welcoming a man that has a vision, that has a heart for the state of Kansas. Your next governor for the great state of Kansas, Derek Schmidt.
Thank you all very much. Good evening, Sedgwick County. It is great to be back in Wichita. What a terrific end to 5 or 6 or 7 days, or it's been several days. But you know what? Here's the thing. I know it was mentioned earlier. Senator Marshall didn't have to be doing this. He's not on a ballot this fall. Roger Marshall has been part of this team because he understands the stakes of this election, and he wants a Republican leadership team on the field. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Matt Schlapp, for coming home. We are very grateful for that as well. The sun came out, and the music will play. And yeah, that's right. We love it. Thank you all for being out this evening. It is a great end to the past several days. We have a lot of work left to do in the next 29 days, which is how much time we have to go. Look, this is energizing for me because I love visiting with Kansans. I have made a career of it. For many years, I've traveled all over this state and listened to folks. It's been part of my service. I've been in our smallest towns. I've been in our biggest cities. I've been in every corner of this state. I've listened to people who agree with me, people who disagree with me, and it has been a wonderful and marvelous experience. I've done even more of that the past couple of years since I've been a candidate for governor. And I want to tell you something I've observed, and you can think to yourself whether this squares with your own observations. I have heard more Kansans say to me in recent months and years that they are genuinely worried and concerned about the future of this country and the direction our country is headed. It is a heartfelt concern, and I hear it from people of all political parties and all geography and all backgrounds. I believe there's a reason for that. And I believe that this election is about addressing that reason. Look, political campaigns and elections are not just about choosing this party or that party because one needs to win and one needs to lose. We have political parties because they reflect different philosophies of what we want our government to be, how we want to be allowed to lead our lives, the values that we put first and foremost. I am a proud Republican. I believe in the values of the Republican Party. But right now, our country is led by people with different values. The other party, the Democrat Party, is led by Joe Biden, President of the United States. There is a Biden Democrat who is in charge of the U.S. House of Representatives in Nancy Pelosi. There is another Biden Democrat. We're going to fix that. There is another Biden Democrat who is in charge of the U.S. Senate in Chuck Schumer. They have the trifecta in Washington and can control the story there. But it's more than that. The Biden Democrats also have tentacles reaching down into so many of our states. And my friends, unfortunately, that includes Kansas, where our governor is one of them. We have a Biden Democrat in this governor's office. This election is about correcting that problem. We have 29 days until we get to fire Laura Kelly. And you don't have to take that from me. You know, I was on a stage with my opponent less than a week ago. We were up in Johnson County. We had a debate. And I had the opportunity that day to ask my opponent a question. So I did. I said, Laura, do you really believe that America and Kansas are better off today because Joe Biden is the President of the United States? And do you know what she said? She said, and I quote, "I'm not going to answer that question." I kid you not. Friends, here's the truth of the matter. We have a Biden Democrat who is the governor in charge of this state, doesn't want you to know it. She doesn't want folks to figure out that that is her philosophy, that in this free country, that's the party she's chosen, that is the people she has chosen to associate with, that is the direction she believes in, at least not for 29 more days. So our mission is clear. Over the remainder of this campaign, we have two tasks. First, we have to make sure that Kansans hold accountable the Biden Democrat, who is our governor right now in this state, for the bad decisions made because of bad philosophy for the past 4 years. And second, we have to make sure Kansans know there is a better option on the ballot. They can vote Republican for a better path forward. So let's talk about just a few of those things for which we have to remind our friends and neighbors and ourselves this administration needs to be held accountable. That was the philosophy that led this governor to decide to order Kansans not to go to church on Holy Week and Easter Sunday for those of us of the Christian faith under penalty of criminal prosecution. She has to be held accountable for the decision to lock our children out of their schools, not only being the first governor in the country to do that for the rest of the first year, but to keep them locked out during the summer, to try to lock them out again in the fall, and then when finally that was not an option for her, to stand silent while so many in parts of our state were kept locked out for months and years thereafter. Friends, this is not just a historical discussion. So many of our kids were harmed by the decisions that were made in those times, and that harm is ongoing. Suicidal ideation, thoughts of self-harm and suicide are up in our kids. There's one study suggests 1/3 of Kansas teenagers have seriously considered ending their own lives in the course of all of this. Mental health interventions for our kids are up. Academic performance is down. Behavioral issues, especially among our youngest kids, are up. More than 15,000 students have left the public school system. And in large part, that's because their parents said, we can't wait for our children anymore. We have to go do something better until this ship is righted. Yeah. And good teachers are leaving the profession in droves. Friends, that is not a record of educational accomplishment, even though my opponent calls herself the education governor. That is a record of failing our children. And if you think that she's learned, think again. It was only 2 weeks ago she was asked about all of this, and my opponent's response? She said, I'll make absolutely no apologies. Absolutely no apologies. Friends, Kansas can do better. She has to be held accountable for the philosophy that led her to lock down businesses, declare some to be non-essential. I have never met somebody in a non-essential business, and I've never met anybody who cashes a non-essential paycheck. The mistaken decisions of one person in the course of only 3 short months, March, April, and May of 2020, destroyed 157,000 Kansas jobs. 157,000 of our friends, our neighbors, and maybe some of ourselves here who were thrown out of work and locked out of their paychecks because of one person's decision. But this is also not just a historical reflection. Because today, as we gather here, Kansas continues to lag near the bottom of all states in recovering jobs that were destroyed by lockdowns. Last I checked, only about 81% of those 157,000 jobs destroyed are back. Kansas ranked about 44th, I believe it was, among all the states in the rate of job recovery. And to put that in context, the state of Utah, which was number 1 in job recovery, has about 130%, give or take, of their jobs recovered. In other words, they got them all back and have grown by nearly a third since then. This is an ongoing failure. Friends, Kansas can do better. And in the middle of all that, of those 157,000 Kansans thrown out of work by bad Biden Democrat decisions, some were eligible for unemployment benefits because they had earned them. And many of those not only couldn't get their benefits when they needed them in order to make a house payment or a car payment or to put food on their table, they couldn't even get their government to answer their phone calls or their emails, because the philosophy of the other side led to incompetence in administration at the Kansas Department of Labor. Kansas must do better than that. It is that same Biden Democrat philosophy that led the current folks in charge to abandon security at our southern border. Now, that was Joe Biden's mistake. But after he made it and has clung to it, folks along the border have stepped up and said, this is now our problem. We're going to have to deal with the consequences. The governors of Arizona and Texas asked other governors around the country, Republicans and Democrats, to help. And do you know what our governor did? Do you know what she said? She not only said, no, I'm not going to send help. She called the whole situation a political game. That was her phrase, a political game. Friends, it is neither a game nor is it political to stand up, recognize the damage being done to our children, our neighbors, our friends here in these communities, including the one we are gathered in, by the record amount of fentanyl, which is not just a drug, it is a poison, shipped from China to Mexico, assembled into a final product, smuggled across the open border by the cartels, distributed here for profit. That is not a game. That is part of the job of the governor of the state of Kansas. Kansas can do better than that. And just a word about the vetoes. Oh, Dan Hawkins, the vetoes, the vetoes. There are too many to mention, but let me mention just a couple. This governor has to be held accountable for the decision to veto more than 20 tax cuts that could have given relief to Kansas families in a time of record inflation caused by the wrong political philosophy that printed money and spent money at a record-setting pace that was irresponsible and is unsustainable. And by the way, one of the tax cuts she vetoed was the food tax cut. If she just would have signed the bill in 2019 when the legislature put it on her desk, the grocery tax in Kansas right now today would be half what it currently is, on its way to zero in January. But she vetoed it then not once, but twice. Saved it for the election year, I suppose. In any event, she's talking about it a lot now. Remember, this governor has to be accountable for vetoing good Second Amendment legislation, for vetoing mental health funding, for vetoing scholarship support for kids who need to go on to trade school and other, the Promise Act. And, of course, this governor must be held accountable for the decision to veto common sense legislation that is supported by Republicans and Democrats, urban and rural, unaffiliated voters, to lock into Kansas law the basic common sense principle that people who are biologically male must not be allowed to compete in women and girls sports. Folks, there is a lot for this team to be held accountable for, this group of Biden Democrats from the top all the way down the ballot, certainly through the governor's office. The bottom line is it's time to choose. In 29 days, Kansans will make a decision. Do we want 4 more years of the same, or do we want to go a different direction? I would suggest the latter. Look, thanks. I didn't intend that as an applause line, but I'll take it. Thank you very much. That's very good. Look, the same people with the same philosophy, that Biden Democrat team, the same people that did the things I just described, errors we will not replicate or extend on our watch. The same people who did that and gave us record high gasoline prices that are on their way back up and gave us the worst inflation in 40 years and so much more. They want Kansans' vote again. Or we can go a different direction and elect Republican leaders up and down the ballot. I'm asking for your support for the whole ticket. The Republican leaders who will wake up every day and say, what can we do today to make Kansans' lives more affordable day to day, whether it's tax relief, whether it's restraint on spending, whether it's common sense public policy that makes Kansans' lives more affordable. The same people who walked away from the southern border, created the harm I described, they want Kansans' vote again. Or we can elect Republican leadership that will wake up every day and say, what can we do today to make Kansans' lives safer? How do we support law enforcement? How do we support the police? How do we help close the border and do our part? And the same people who locked our children out of schools and did all the harm I described, they want Kansans' votes again. Or we can elect Republican leaders who will wake up every day and say, what can we do today to make sure we are putting kids and parents first in decisions about educating and raising the next generation? To make sure parents have their rights guaranteed. To make every child has the right opportunity for growing that child's educational abilities. Friends, it is time for choosing. I think the choice is clear. But look, this is not about me, and it's not about us as your candidates. It is about all of us as Kansans who together are going to choose the direction for the next 4 years of this state. And I need your help. We need your help. For the next 29 days, please tell the story. Take a yard sign with you today and proudly plant it, because that will invite people who live near you or know you or are just walking by to ask, why do you think that's a better choice? And then you can tell them what you know and what we need to do. Please talk to your friends and your neighbors and the folks at work and the folks at church and people you know in the community and tell them why this election matters and why you're voting Republican and why we need that change. And most importantly, please show up on Election Day. Cast your vote, but don't do it alone. Take with you 10 friends and ask them to each take 10 friends. Because this election is going to be won by Kansans making this decision. And I know we are on the right side. We can do better, and we will. God bless you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, he's going to be a hell of a governor. Schmidt.